Hello, I'm Clara, and something absolutely terrifying happened to me. I'm one of those unlucky ones who wakes up at the drop of a pin. I always thought being a light sleeper was the worst thing in the world, until one night when I was 13 years old. My parents had to go to an emergency conference in London, so they left me home alone for a week. They didn't seem to mind because my grandma lives a few blocks away, so they knew I'd be fine. The night before they were due back, I went out with my friends for milkshakes at our local diner. My friend's mom dropped me home and I headed straight to bed. I was so tired, I fell straight into a deep sleep. I woke up feeling thirsty and reached out for my water. That's when I heard it. It sounded like someone was in my parents' room. I suddenly panicked and wondered if I'd slept through to the next night and my parents had already come back. Was I that tired? I checked my phone and saw it was still the same night and it was 3 a.m. My heart started thumping in my chest. I tried to be rational. Maybe Felix, the neighbor's cat, had slipped through an open window. Putting on my bravest face possible, I crept towards my door and locked it, just in case. I then slid down onto my knees, pulling the key out so that I could peek through the lock. That's when I saw him. There was a man standing in our hall, rummaging through one of my mom's handbags. I froze. My heart felt like it was about to pop out and my palms were sweating. I blinked, and when I looked again, he was coming right for me. Could he see my eye? I backed away from the door and covered my mouth to stop myself from screaming as he tried my door handle. I didn't even want to imagine what would have happened next if I hadn't locked my door. I got a good look at him, and I knew in that moment that his was a face I'd never forget. He kicked my door in frustration, and then I heard him walking away. I crawled back to the lock and saw him heading for my parents' room. This was my chance. It was now or never. I put the key back in the lock and as quietly as possible unlocked it. I opened the door praying that it wouldn't squeak and crawled towards the stairs. I don't even know why I was crawling. As I was making my way down the stairs, I forgot what happened on the third stair from the bottom. As my foot touched it, it groaned beneath me and I felt sure that was it. He was going to come out and find me there and shoot me or something. The next thing I knew, I was running for the phone. I felt like my whole body was going to explode. I could hear him throwing things around above me, and as I picked up the phone, my mind went blank. I couldn't even remember what to call. After a few seconds, I remembered. I whispered into the phone, and the woman on the other end could barely hear me. I crawled behind the sofa and lay there crying silently for what felt like a year. Suddenly, I heard his footsteps on the stairs and I could see him coming for me. He got closer and closer, and just as he reached the end of the sofa where my feet were, the front door burst open and 3 cops ran in. My heart had been beating so hard I hadn't even heard them arriving outside. I stood up shivering and hysterical, and the female cop came over and hugged me. I just stood there crying in her arms while the other cops handcuffed the guy and marched him out to the car. He looked back at me, and I'll never forget the way his eyes pierced through me. It was in our local paper the following day, and he was given a fine for breaking and entering, but he wasn't locked up or anything. I guess it's lucky that my parents keep all our valuables locked away in a safe. But anyway, that part almost scared me most. The fact that he was still out there somewhere. What if he came back? His face still haunts me to this day. And yesterday I went to collect some bread for my mom at the grocery store. It's a pretty small store, so I headed to the back where they keep the bread. I was playing on my phone and I didn't notice the basket on the ground and I tripped over. As I landed, I noticed a familiar-looking guy putting stuff into his backpack. Then I clicked. He was stealing! I let out a gasp, and he turned on his heels. As soon as our eyes locked, I realized why he looked so familiar. It was him! The burglar from 2 years ago! He winked at me and continued taking things off the shelf and shoving them in his bag. I froze again, but this time not in fear. I grabbed a can of spaghetti hoops and threw it right at him. It hit him and he got such a fright he fell into a stack of toilet rolls, sending them flying everywhere. I screamed and the store clerk and security guard came running. They found his bag full of stolen goods and called the cops. I just stood there smiling proudly. There was no way on earth that burglar was getting away a second time. I wanted to make sure he'd be locked up once and for all.